Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we sift through complex info, find those key insights, and basically give you the shortcut to knowing what's really going on. We love finding those surprising facts as aha moments. And today we are diving into something you probably haven't thought much about. I certainly had it at first. But trust me, it tells a really interesting story about some big global shifts. We're talking about, believe it or not, lupin seeds. Okay, so what are lupin seeds? Well, they're legumes, kind of like lentils or chickpeas. And they're incredibly high in protein and fiber, so people are using them more and more. Think gluten-free flour, ingredients for plant-based meats. That whole sector is booming.
Right, and even sustainable animal feed. They're very nutrient-rich.
Exactly. So that versatility is really what's driving this, well, this surprising growth we're seeing globally. Now, our source for this deep dive is a really detailed market report. It's from Cognitive Market Research. It's got global figures, regional breakdowns.
Yeah.
Starts in 2021, projects out to 2025, and then way out to 2033.
Yeah, it's quite comprehensive. And our mission really is to unpack that growth. We want to explore just how fast this market is moving, get a handle on its size now, and see where it's headed over the next, decade or so. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how looking at something specific like lupin seeds, maybe seemingly niche, it can actually spotlight these much broader economic shifts and big opportunities, too. It's more than just the numbers.
Absolutely. It's the story behind the numbers. So let's dive right in. Let's hit those top-level global figures first, just to grab your attention. Get this. The Global Lupin Seed Market back in 2021 was already worth $1.32 billion.
Which is pretty substantial already.
Right. But here's the kicker. It's projected to hit over $1.76 billion by 2025. And then, hold on, by 2033, it's forecast to soar past $3.14 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. That represents a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of 7.5%.
And a 7.5% CAGR, for a market like this. That's really strong. It signals very consistent expansion. We're not talking about a short-term spike here. This is steady, almost relentless growth over more than a decade. It suggests there are some real fundamental drivers pushing this, maybe changing diets, farming innovations, new industrial uses. It makes it a very solid growth story.
That's a great point. It's not just a fad. So, okay, the global picture is strong growth. But where is it happening? Let's zoom in a bit on the regions, because that's where you see the really exciting pockets of expansion and maybe get closer to the why. All right, leading the charge in terms of growth rate is Asia Pacific, an impressive 9.023% CAGR. That's the highest anywhere.
9%? Wow.
Yeah. So this market there is set to surge from about $309 million in 2021 all the way up to $842 million by 2033. And look at some of the key countries. China, going from roughly $96 million to over $253 million.
More than doubling.
Right. And India, same story, from $44 million to over $127 million.
What do you think is driving that in China and India specifically?
Well, likely they're huge populations, right? Expanding middle classes, maybe looking for different protein sources. Plant-based options.
And maybe the scale of their animal agriculture, too, looking for sustainable feed inputs.
That seems very plausible. And it's not just them. Japan's growing nicely from about $52 million to $124 million. South Korea from $34 million to over $100 million.
And it seems pretty broad even beyond those big players. Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia, they're all showing significant jumps. Singapore, for instance, more than tripling. That suggests it's not just one or two giants, but a wider regional trend.
Definitely a widespread embrace across diverse Asian markets.
Right.
Okay, so Asia Pacific has the fastest growth rate. Now let's connect that to North America. It's actually the second largest region in terms of, well, sheer dollar value.
Right, bigger market size overall. Currently.
Exactly. It's projected to grow from $469 million in 2021 to over $1 billion, $1.035 billion by 2033. The CAGR there is a solid 6.664%.
Still very healthy growth.
For sure. And the U.S. market is the giant here, obviously. Projected to jump from $380 million to over $813 million.
Yeah, and you have to think that's driven heavily by, health trends, the whole plant-based movement, gluten-free. That's huge in the U.S.
No doubt. But Canada's also set to more than double its market size, from around $45 million to over $100 million.
And Mexico, too. Look at that surge from $43 million projected up to $120 million.
That is interesting. Mexico more than doubling. Maybe new dietary shifts or perhaps changes in local farming?
Could be. It suggests the demand isn't just confined to the usual suspects, but broadening across the continent.
Okay, let's cross the Atlantic. Europe. We're seeing accelerating adoption there, too.
Yeah.
The market's forecast to grow from $383 million back in 2021 to over $840 million by 2033.
So again, more than doubling over the period.
Yeah, and the big players are doing well. The UK going from $52 million to over $100 million. Germany, $67 million up to $138 million. France, similar story, $48 million to $115 million.
Italy, Spain also showing strong growth. It seems pretty consistent across Western Europe.
It does. But what really caught my eye was the rest of Europe category.
Ah, yes. What's happening there?
Well, that segment, which includes, a whole bunch of other countries, it nearly tripled. From $81 million to over $236 million projected.
Tripled. Wow. That often points to something interesting happening beyond the established markets. Maybe new food trends taking hold, health movements spreading, or even local farming initiatives really pushing lupins in smaller nations. It suggests deeper penetration.
That's a really good point. It's not just the big economies. Okay, so growth isn't just limited to those three major regions. Let's look at South America. Steady expansion there, too. Projected growth from $68 million to over $194 million.
Another region nearly tripling its market size.
Seems to be a theme. Brazil is a big driver there, set to almost triple its value from $25 million to over $70 million.
And Argentina, Colombia showing strong growth as well. Given the large agricultural sectors, maybe animal feed is a big factor there.
Could be. Or maybe, like elsewhere, emerging health food sectors are playing a role.
Yeah, likely a mix. Peru, Chile, rest of South America all growing significantly too.
Then we have the Middle East, also climbing steadily. From $55 million in 2021, projected across $150 million, $151.9 million by 2033.
And again, key players showing big jumps. Saudi Arabia nearly tripling its market.
Right, from $18.5 million to over $52 million. And the UAE, Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, all showing significant expansion.
Suggests maybe evolving diets, a growing interest in diverse protein sources, perhaps for food security reasons too.
Seems plausible for that region. Okay, last but not least, let's look at Africa. Also showing a promising upward trend, expanding from about $34 million in 2021 to a projected $81 million by 2033.
So more than doubling there as well.
Yep. Nigeria is growing from $6 million to $16 million. South Africa leads, going from about $13 million to nearly $30 million.
And again, that rest of Africa segment is quite telling.
So?
Well, it's projected to more than double too, reaching over $66 million. That points to growing local demand and maybe shifting agricultural practices across many different parts of the continent. Lupin seeds could be a really valuable crop there, protein-rich, potentially drought-resistant.
That makes a lot of sense. And just to remind everyone listening, all these numbers, the global, the regional, the country-specific ones, they all come directly from that detailed cognitive market research report we mentioned. It's pretty amazing to see this level of detail for a market like lupin seeds. So, okay, let's try and wrap this up. The core finding, really, from this deep dive is just this incredibly robust growth in the global lupin seed market. It's on track to nearly triple its 2021 value by 2033.
Absolutely. And pulling those regional threads together, you see a clear picture. Asia-Pacific is leading the charge with the fastest growth rate. Think plant-based demand, think feed demand. Europe is accelerating, but maybe more driven by culinary trends, health movements spreading across more countries.
Right, that rest of Europe surge.
Exactly. And then the Americas, North and South, plus Africa, they're all showing really steady, significant expansion too. Driven by a mix of things: gluten-free needs in the U.S., maybe feed in South America, agricultural potential in Africa. These aren't just abstract numbers. They're real signals of changing global tastes, shifts in farming, and how people are thinking about food and sustainability.
It really paints a picture. So the final question for you listening, what does all this mean? We've seen how even a market you might not think about often, like lupin seeds, is experiencing this really remarkable global growth, quietly becoming a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. And that makes you wonder, doesn't it, what other overlooked sectors, maybe tied to sustainable agriculture or changing consumer habits, what else might be quietly blossoming right under our noses? Something to think about.
You know, I was genuinely surprised when I first started looking into today's topic. It seems, well, kind of small on the surface, but it has these massive implications. We're talking about the humble lupin seed.
Ah, yes, lupin.
And I'm really keen today with you, our expert, to explore how something so, well, unassuming is quietly reshaping, our food landscape.
It really is. It's fascinating stuff.
So our mission for this deep dive, for you listening, is to unpack how this often overlooked crop is becoming a bit of a powerhouse
Right.
driven by these huge global trends, lots of innovation too, but also how it's facing some pretty unique challenges.
Having challenges too.
And just so everyone knows, all the insights we're sharing come directly from some really detailed, cutting-edge market research.
And that's key because
Yeah.
this is a truly dynamic sector. What we're going to explore about lupin, it really has significant implications
For like what we eat.
for what we eat, exactly how we farm, and honestly, the very future of sustainable food systems. Get ready for some real aha moments, I think, as we uncover just how significant this crop is becoming almost under the radar.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's dive in. When we talk about lupin's sudden, prominence, what's the one factor maybe that's making the biggest splash right now? Is it really unique in how it's capitalizing on these trends?
That's a great question. You've hit on a crucial point. The first, and I'd say most undeniable, fundamental driver, it's the surge in demand for plant-based protein. It's huge.
Okay, the protein angle makes sense.
Yeah, but what's truly insightful about lupin's protein isn't just the amount, and it is impressive, like 30% to 40%.
Wow, it's high.
It is, but it's also its unique amino acid balance. Unlike a lot of other plant proteins, lupin offers a more complete nutritional profile, more like animal protein, actually,
Oh, interesting.
which is a game changer for formulators trying to mimic meat or dairy without just relying on, say, soy all the time.
Right, right. Okay, so beyond the protein, which is obviously key, I heard some buzz about lupin in the gluten-free space. How significant is that market for it? Is it a real differentiator or is it more niche?
Oh, it's absolutely a true differentiator. Lupin flour is naturally gluten-free, and it's incredibly low in starch.
Okay.
So that makes it ideally suited as a direct substitute for traditional grain-based flours. Think pasta, bread, baked goods, stuff like that.
Right.
And because it's also high in fiber and protein, it fits perfectly into those health-conscious segments, diabetic-friendly, ketogenic diets.
The keto crowd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just a filler ingredient there. It brings real functional and nutritional benefits to those markets.
And it's not just about what's on our plates, I guess, but also about what's happening in the soil, right? How does lupin play into the sustainable farming movement?
Yeah, that leads us to its agricultural story, which is, well, just as compelling. The third key driver we're seeing is the demand for sustainable animal feed ingredients.
Okay.
See, lupin is a nitrogen-fixing plant.
Right, I've heard that term. What does that mean exactly for a farmer?
Well, it means it pulls nitrogen from the air and puts it into the soil. So it enhances soil fertility naturally. This isn't just an environmental perk, though. It's a profound economic advantage
Oh, so?
because it significantly reduces the need for expensive synthetic fertilizers. In an era where input costs are rising and we're worried about soil health, lupin offers this rare win-win.
A cash crop that actually helps the land.
Precisely. It revitalizes the land while being a crop itself. So that makes it an environmentally friendly and protein-rich feed option for livestock, poultry, even aquaculture. Supports eco-conscious farming practices.
Okay, so lupin clearly has some significant upsides. I mean, incredible versatility. But every emerging ingredient faces hurdles, right? What are the most challenging roadblocks you're seeing? What could stop it from really, breaking into the mainstream?
What's fascinating here is that even with strong growth, there are, significant restraints. The first major challenge, it's recognized as a significant allergen.
Like peanuts or soy.
Exactly. It can actually cause cross-reactivity in people with peanut allergies.
Oh, wow. That's serious.
It is. And it's listed as a mandatory declarable allergen in many places, including the EU.
Right.
So that complicates allergen labeling for food producers. They have to be really careful, list it clearly, manage cross-contamination, which naturally, limits its mass adoption in everyday foods.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, when I looked at some of the market data, one statistic really jumped out at me about the supply chain, something about where it's grown. Is that as big a vulnerability as it sounds?
You've hit on a critical vulnerability there. If we connect this to the sort of bigger picture of global supply, there's considerable risk due to concentrated production.
How concentrated?
Get this. A staggering 60% to 70% of the global lupin seed supply comes from Australia alone.
60 to 70% from one country.
Yep, just Australia.
Yeah.
So this geographic dependence makes the whole supply chain highly vulnerable. Think about localized climate shocks, droughts, frosts, things like that, which Australia certainly gets.
And the implication is?
Volatile pricing.
Yeah.
And potentially severe global supply disruptions if something major happens in that one key region. It's a big Achilles heel.
Wow. Okay. So we've talked big picture allergens, supply chains. But sometimes the devil's in the details, right? Especially taste and usability for new ingredients. Is that a real hurdle for lupin?
That's precisely right. Yeah, that's another one. Beyond the allergen and supply chain stuff, lupin faces a hurdle many novel ingredients do.
Yeah.
Its taste. It has this inherent beany or sometimes slightly bitter flavor.
Okay.
And even the modern sweet lupin varieties, the ones bred to be less bitter, can still contain compounds, anti-nutritional factors essentially,
Meaning?
meaning substances that can actually inhibit nutrient absorption. They make it harder for your body to get all the goodness out of the food.
Right.
So this distinctive flavor, combined with those factors, often means it needs advanced processing, things like deflavoring or isolating the protein to get rid of the unwanted bits.
Which adds cost, I assume.
Exactly. Adds cost and complexity for the food formulators trying to use it. It's not always just a simple swap.
So given these significant challenges, the allergens, the shaky supply chain, the taste issues, how are researchers and manufacturers actually tackling them? How are they pushing lupin forward? What does the future look like?
Well, this leads us directly to the key trends reshaping the market. And there's actually a lot of exciting work happening. It's not all doom and gloom.
Good to hear.
One standout trend is the development of advanced protein isolates. We're seeing a clear shift away from just using simple lupin flour towards purified lupin coating concentrates and isolates.
And what's the benefit there?
These refined forms offer much improved functional properties. Think better emulsification, better foaming, things food scientists love. And crucially, they have a much more neutral flavor.
Getting around the beanie taste.
Exactly. Which makes them really suitable for sensitive applications, like beverages or plant-based dairy alternatives, where you don't want that off flavor coming through.
It sounds like lupin is becoming a real shapeshifter in the plant-based world, almost like a chameleon, adapting to different needs.
Indeed, that's a good way to put it. And another exciting trend is applying lupin specifically in plant-based egg and dairy replacements.
Okay.
Thanks to its natural emulsifying and gelling abilities, those functional properties we just mentioned, lupin protein is now being used to develop things like vegan cheese, vegan mayonnaise, even egg substitutes.
Really? Vegan eggs?
Yeah, and this is happening just as the market for dairy and egg-free products is absolutely surging. Lupin offers a new, effective tool to meet that demand.
And finally, I guess it's not just about what we do with the lupin after it's harvested, but also making the crop itself better, right? More resilient, more rewarding for the farmers. How are they innovating at the agricultural level?
This is a vital area of agricultural innovation, absolutely. We're seeing a really strong push toward breeding new and improved lupin varieties.
What are they focusing on?
Researchers are working hard on developing strains that are high yield, more resistant to diseases, with enhanced nutritional profiles, and, crucially, with reduced levels of those anti-nutritional factors we talked about, trying to breed out the problematic compounds.
Making it easier to use from the start.
Exactly. These innovations are absolutely key to making lupin a more consistent, more profitable, and just a more reliable crop for farmers worldwide. And that, in turn, helps mitigate some of those supply chain vulnerabilities we discussed earlier, diversify the growing regions, make it easier to grow well elsewhere.
What an incredible deep dive into the world of lupin. It's really clear this isn't just, another niche ingredient bouncing around. It's a fascinating case study in how food science responds to these huge global shifts.
That's right. I mean, the lupin seed market, it's on a powerful upward trajectory. You can see it clearly in the data. It's driven by these massive forces.
Yes.
Sustainability, health-conscious consumption, technical innovation.
All converging.
All converging on this one seed. And as that demand keeps growing for plant-based, gluten-free, eco-friendly products, lupin is positioning itself not just as like a passing trend, but as a potential staple, a real cornerstone of the future food ecosystem.
So for you, the listener, maybe something to think about is this. As food science continues to unlock the full potential of crops, like lupin, often crops that were historically overlooked, right?
Right.
How might our whole understanding of what constitutes a superfood truly evolve? And maybe what new possibilities might that open up for global nutrition and sustainable agriculture in the decades to come?